Welcome to the Shock Your Potential podcast with your host, Michael Sherlock. We all have potential, but sometimes we need inspiration to get us to our peak performance. Whether you are starting out in your career, ready to move up the corporate ladder, or taking the leap into entrepreneurship, Michael's guests provide powerful tools and resources to shock your potential. Shock Your Potential is a global professional development training company committed to your unique journey. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com. Listen in to today's expert.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Shock Your Potential. I am your host, Michael Sherlock. And as you know, all month long in the month of May, we are calling it Mindful May. And that's because it's important to not only be mindful of our, own mental health, which is our overriding theme for the month, but also to understand how mindfulness and meditation practices also may impact your sense of mental well-being. So my guest today is going to have a really unique perspective on this. Lauren Saunders is a business mentor for spiritual entrepreneurs, and she coaches them, that are those people who are ambitious and heart-driven, those that run their businesses and, know they're entrepreneurs, but they also have maybe something just a little more behind them. Now, at age 28, she left her career as a high school art teacher to begin this crazy life of entrepreneurship. And since then, she's been built two full-time businesses by implementing mindset, marketing, and manifestation strategies that actually work. And I know we've talked about similar themes in the past with other guests. I think this is going to be a really unique perspective. Her experience and massive success has allowed her to coach business owners all over the world and help them to make that transition, from side gig to full-time entrepreneurship. And as an entrepreneur herself, she's quadrupled her income as a teacher and lives a life of travel, freedom, and passion. She's lit up when providing ambitious business owners with the tools they need to make sure they can manifest that success and actually live lives on a day-to-day basis that they enjoy. So, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael. I'm really excited to be here.
I think, first of all, congratulations on quadrupling your income from being a high school teacher. I started my career as an elementary school teacher, and I know that the salary that I made was just not feasible for the lifestyle I wanted to have. Therefore, I'm no longer a school teacher either. So I know that there's a lot of passion between, for people who teach, but it's not always something that is able to, really manifest its way in other areas of your life. So congratulations on taking the big leap.
Yeah. In Canada, it's considered a pretty decent job, especially if you stay at it for 10 years, you're up at the top of the sort of pay grid, which is just short of six figures in most places. Which I wasn't anywhere close to, but it's still, so I had like what was considered a good job. And I was like, this still is not paying for the things that I want it to. Like, I felt like it wasn't all financial for me, obviously, but that's always been a motivator for me. And as a business coach, I love talking to people about making more money if that's something they desire.
Absolutely. And I think mindset and manifestations are such an incredible part of this. It's something that's been a part of my entrepreneurship journey this time around. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. I'm going back and forth between, the corporate America and, entrepreneurship. But this time around, this has been a huge part of what I have found for myself is successful as well. So I can't wait to learn more. So, I hit the highlights of your bio. Tell us a little bit more in your own words about what you do and how you help your clients to shock their potential.
Well, I love the name of your podcast because I do think we all have incredible potential that for the most part remains untapped for many of us. And I know that that's something that, we all feel on a deeper level, but just don't know what to do about necessarily. So yeah, as you said, I am a business mentor and coach for entrepreneurs. Predominantly, I work with people who have online businesses. So other coaches, course creators, content creators, just people that are building their brand online. And most of the time that is other coaches, like I said. And I'm very passionate about giving people the right tools in terms of marketing and, strategy. However, what I know to be true is that the role that our mindset plays and our energy plays trumps all of that. And even the marketing that we implement needs to feel aligned for us. What works for one person is not what's going to work for somebody else. So even within the more sort of masculine side of building a business, which is marketing and strategy, which I really am a fan of, it still needs to be, it's still hugely a part of the mindset side of business, because when you feel good about how you're putting yourself out there and you believe in your offers and in your services and you believe in yourself, you're going to market yourself differently than if not, right? And a lot of the time in the business world, it's this conversation of just do these things, just take out these ads and have this kind of opt-in and this kind of sales funnel and you'll make money. And clearly that's just not true, because otherwise everyone that had ever put a funnel in place would be making $1 million, and they're not because there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, you have to feel good about what you're doing without a doubt, and have confidence behind it. And it reminds me of a quick story that I probably have told before on the podcast, but I had like a consultation with someone who her services were something I was really considering. And I had met her, in a unique environment. I wasn't quite sure if she was the one to work with, but, I figured it was a consultation. It was the first time I was talking with someone in that space. And, so we started out, and I could tell that, the conversation, she had a pitch down, like somebody had said, here's the 10 steps to convert somebody in your, free consulting session to become a client, which I knew. I mean, I expected that, right? I'm not offended by that. I know what the deal is. But at one point in time, but I just felt like she wasn't comfortable. She wasn't comfortable in that process. And at one point in time, she shared her screen and showed me the, whatever, some questionnaire, and which of these would you choose? And which would these of you choose? And so when we got done with that, she forgot to turn off her screen sharing. So she continued on her pitch, and that rest of that page was the pitch, and I could see it. And I didn't have the heart to tell her, because I knew she was already not comfortable with it.
Right.
And it was just so painful. And it's such a hard story to tell, because I just wanted to say to her, you actually have something that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
And you have great expertise in this, but until you fix this, and I feel like today I should still call her and tell her this, but I haven't done it yet. 'Cause I'm like,
I like you, not your pitch.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But if you're not confident, it's that no matter who sold you the best, 10 steps to whatever, it's not going to work.
Well, and that's the thing. And I actually started my online business with something very similar to that, a coach that, walked you through her process. And part of that was a sales call. And it felt so uncomfortable to me, because I felt like instead of really being with the person, I was trying to remember the right things to say. And it's funny because I wasn't making any money in my business at that point. Whereas now I make a lot and I don't do any of that stuff. I don't really have, I believe in speaking to people powerfully about, what you have to offer and being confident in how you can help them and speaking to that. And I definitely do that in my marketing, but I don't have any kind of sales process. I really just believe that the right people are going to feel like they're going to know that they want to work with me. And all I have to do is show up for them. And I'm not even interested if I have to convince someone to work with them because I said all the right things and they were on the fence, but then I said something at the right time. And that was the reason they spent, lots of money to work with me. That doesn't feel authentic to me. I would rather have someone who's like a heck yes than a, yeah, I guess so. Right. Yeah. So, but it's interesting because being on in your experience on the other side of that, if she had just shown up and said, hey, this is how I can help you, it would have been a completely different thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if she had just shown up and really believed in what she was offering and that her time was worth your money and your investment, then it would have gone completely differently. But what that really says to me was just she had a real lack of self-trust.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which we all start with, especially as business owners.
Sure.
But yeah, so good story.
On the flip side, I also had a woman that I interviewed that's actually for our series this month in March, and because it's all about marketing. And I was really impressed with her, what she does in terms of some Facebook advertising and that type of thing. And we have not advertised anything yet. There's a couple of things that we want to do. And so my director of marketing and I met with her and had a meeting. And what so impressed me is, to your point, she showed up with what she does. She was passionate about it, but she was also realistic with us and said, look, here, to do what you want to do, you actually need to be to this number of engaged followers on your Facebook page. Because if this is what you're trying to achieve, you need to do this. And I would encourage you to build that first before working with me. And it was it was such a wonderful interaction. So we've been working on that strategy. We're getting closer to it. But as soon as we are there, we'll definitely work with her because
Right.
she showed up. And to have somebody say,
Right.
look, I'm happy to work with you, but you're not ready for me yet. And here's what you need to do to accomplish it for this one specific goal. And I was like, wow, now that's
Yes.
incredible. That's powerful stuff.
She literally said, "Don't give me your money yet." And the result
Yes.
was, "I want to give you all the money. Like, when can I work
And
with you? Take it."
I know, I'm like, but I want to give it to you now because I believe in you. Okay, we'll do the other hard work first for that part. But yeah, it creates an environment. So when you talk about working, with spiritual entrepreneurs, what do you mean by
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, I believe very strongly in manifestation on different levels. It's not so much a spiritual thing for me. Well, it's kind of become that way. In the early days, I really dove into the world of quantum physics and understanding, how our thoughts are so intrinsically linked to the reality that we experience. It's really like once you start getting into it, it's really not something that you can deny. Whereas as earlier on, like I used to be someone that just believed very much in like happenstance, some people got
Mhm.
lucky and some people didn't. And once I started understanding like the science behind manifestation, it really made it available to me. And from there, I started embracing more of the spiritual side. For me, when I talk about, working with spiritual entrepreneurs, that's like working with people who are very much in their soul's purpose and mission in the
Mhm.
way that they help people, right? And doing things in a way that feels good to them, leading with their intuition, because my intuition is the reason I am where I am today. I've trusted it over everything. I've learned to trust it more and more. And even, I have a coach who I love and she's amazing and she's doing incredible things in her business. But she might tell me to do something and I still will always go with what feels right to me. And sometimes that's
Mhm.
exactly what she's told me to do. And sometimes it's not. Right.
Right.
So, working with spiritual entrepreneurs, a lot of the time people that I'm working with are talking about mindset and manifestation with their clients.
Mhm.
But more than that, it's just I'm working with people who know that that they are a part of something much bigger, that they can rely on the universe or on life or on God, whatever resonates with you. I don't care.
Mhm.
I often talk about the universe and allowing the universe to show up for you. And yeah, so that's, I work with people who understand just how powerful their thoughts and their mindset are in creating their reality and are wanting to learn how to leverage their energy to create a life that they love.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important to recognize how much, it comes back to the old adage of, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. Yes.
But I think it's really exciting to me that where we are in the world today, that there's so many more people that are open to realizing that they, in terms of meditation or mindfulness practice, or I do a lot of hypnosis meditation now.
Mm.
The things that get your mind in alignment with your goals and your mind in alignment with, your where you are at the moment, and trying to, use that opportunity to bridge you to the next level. But it makes me think about even when like the book and the movie The Secret came out, there are either people that went all in and they're like, I completely believe everything of that, or they said, I don't believe any of that. It's all smoke and mirrors or snake
Yeah.
oil salesmen. And at least now I think people
There's a middle
understand that,
ground.
yeah,
Yeah,
just a lot there that we can access. You just have to start
totally.
by opening your mind a little.
And like I am happy to explain manifestation in a very logic based way in terms of the way that the brain works. The brain searches for evidence of whatever it is that you're thinking about. It finds ways to get you to what you are focusing on. So, even just understanding the way that the brain works, if you are focusing on what you want in your business, in your life, in your career, your brain's going to show you the way there. You're going to be
Mhm.
literally open and receptive to the opportunities coming your way. Whereas if you're focusing on, things aren't going well for me or I'm not making any money or clients don't want to work with me, you're going to seeing evidence for that, and that's going to become your reality as well. So I really do believe in the whole energetic side of things, but even for people that don't, you can't afford to not pay attention to just how important your mindset is. And then on top of that as well, the level of belief you have in yourself dictates how you show up as well. When I really believe in what I'm promoting, I'm going to promote it more. I'm going to promote it with more confidence. I'm going to come across as just someone filled with conviction around what she has to offer. When I'm questioning myself, it's another story, right? So
Right.
I don't need people to believe in manifestation if that's because I was like, I watched The Secret and was like, okay, like that sounds nice. I don't think so. I was the latter for sure. And I've obviously, come around. But I think that, we can allow ourselves to embrace it at whatever. I'm not like a big crystals person. I don't burn sage and stuff. It's just not who I am. Right. Whereas I have friends they pick their cards every single morning and they chant 3 times and all the things, and that's what works for them. So,
Yeah.
I think we need to allow ourselves to embrace whatever level of mindset or spirituality or energy work, that resonates with you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And it can be different. It can be just something as simple as somebody taking a walk and just saying, I've got to go clear my
Absolutely.
head.
Yep.
I love it when people are like, oh, no, I don't do any of that, but I go running. Well, so what do you do when you're running? Well, it's my time
Right.
to have a clear head. Well, guess what? That's not
Exactly.
a whole lot different than me sitting down to do a meditation. It's just
Exactly.
you're burning
Absolutely.
more calories than I am.
Yeah. Oh, like there's been times in my business when I'm really like, attached to something, like I'm in a launch and I feel like it's not going well, or I'm attached to working with a certain person. And the first thing I do is go for a walk and go, I'm so, fortunate. I have so much to be grateful for. And that just has me zoom out from the whole thing. And it's such a powerful practice for, whatever reason you're doing it for.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think that I've lost, at least because I live in downtown Philadelphia, and prior to the pandemic, my husband's office is 1.1 miles away, and so most every morning I would get up and I'd walk him to the office, and then I'd
Mm,
have a mile on my way home just of me, and then
right.
he would often walk home without me, so we each had a mile together to walk and a
Yeah.
mile of our own time, either before or the end of the day. And I miss that. And now that
Yeah.
it's actually finally not, Arctic here, we actually got out and went for a run this morning. And it was so great to start the day with a run or a walk, that space that I think I've really lost an entire year of not having a mile, 5 days a week. That's just
Totally.
that. This is just me and my head time.
Yeah.
Jumped into work. I can feel the weight of that after so long.
Yeah, for me, it's been, I mean, not a lot shifted for me in terms of my workflow and stuff like that, because I did work from home, but I used to really rely on going to coffee shops, especially during the
Mm,
winter. I live in Toronto, so
mhm.
it's also
Yeah.
Arctic. And I just loved, going and being around people and feeling the inspiration. And I would sit at my computer for a few hours and I would just be so intentional. And there's been multiple times where I got to the point where it was like, I have a very beautiful 2-bedroom apartment. I have so much more than what a lot of people have in terms of my home space. But there's still been times when I'm like, I just can't look at these walls anymore. Like I have
Yeah.
no inspiration, So I think it's affected different people in different ways. And something as simple as a morning walk, like that absolutely would affect your mindset, especially over a long period of time as it's been.
Yeah, I agree. Talking about so many important aspects that I believe in very fully, and especially with having the right mindset for your business. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. Definitely have had my road bumps with it. And
There is no
most of my
such
listeners,
thing as
yeah,
perfect.
that is so
Yeah.
true. And that's
Yeah.
true. And if we think it's kind of like when people say, oh, I can't meditate. I've tried it and it didn't work for me. I'm like, that's why they call it a practice. It's not a succeed.
Yeah.
It's a
The way that I
practice.
say it to people is like, if you go to the gym, there's some days when you are on fire and you
Yeah.
just feel so good. And then there's other days where it felt heavy the whole time, but you still went to the gym. Like you still moved your body. It was still worth your time. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not about perfection. It's about doing it. I agree. And I think, all month long I'm tying this issue back to our mental health as well. So I know we've talked a lot about success in business, which I'm a firm
Mhm.
believer in. What do you think the role of, mindfulness and really being kind of putting those those thoughts out into the world, what does that do you think to our mental health and sense of overall well-being just for us personally?
In regards to, sorry, can you
Just
reframe the question for me?
yeah, just thinking about mindfulness and manifestations, we've been talking a
Yeah.
lot about, kind of that role in business and success. But, what do you see it as, a benefit for somebody, not just in their business, but just for them personally as well?
Oh, I think it's so important. I mean, for me, having my business really brings me back to doing my mindset work because I'm, a very like goal-oriented person. But I think that mindset is a topic for every human being on the planet. And one of the things that has been coming up a lot lately in terms of conversations that I've had, in terms of kind of what I'm feeling led to work towards, that I think is a very relevant and important conversation for anybody, is the idea of acceptance of our emotions. And because a lot of the time when we're talking about mindset, it's within this idea that there's things to change, right?
Mhm.
I feel anxious today and I don't want to feel anxious. I need to feel happy. And it's this
Mhm.
constant conversation that we're in with ourselves and with other people around why the way that we feel isn't the way that we should feel. When in
Mhm.
reality, if we could instead change the story that we have about our emotions and stop making them wrong, there's an immense amount of freedom in that. There's a great book called The Ultimate Key to Happiness. And essentially the takeaway of it is it's not the emotions themselves that we feel, it's the story that we have about them. Um, and if you're watching a movie that's, say, very suspenseful and you're feeling really anxious watching it, at the end of the movie, you're like, wow, that was great. That was an amazing movie. I felt, I was on the edge of my seat my entire time. And we actually enjoy the feeling of anxiety. I mean, it
Mhm.
depends what kind of movies you're into, because it was, I do. Anyways, I love a thriller
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
an emotional roller coaster that you actually enjoy going on. Whereas when it's in our own lives, we have a story about our emotions that make them unpleasant, right? I'm feeling anxious about
Mhm.
this, and that means that I am a failure, or I shouldn't be. This is a bad emotion. This is a good one, and I only want to feel the good ones. But if we could
Right.
instead view all emotions through more of like a neutral observance, really, where it's like, I have anxiety today. I'm a human being. There's a pandemic going on. Of course I do.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Like I think there's a lot to be said about that. And that's really been transformative for me. Instead of this trying to climb my way out of a way that I don't want to feel anymore, to just be with it, I find that it usually passes a lot faster because what you resist persists. So if you're resisting your
Mhm.
emotions or your thoughts or whatever, you're just feeding more and more energy into them, right? Whereas
Yeah.
if you're just kind of observing them and going, I'm having these kinds of thoughts today, okay, doesn't have to mean anything. They're just there. I'm a human. That's normal. They're going to
Yeah.
just naturally, stick around for as long as they're meant to, and then they're going to leave. So I don't know if that answers your question, but in terms of mindset on a more like general level for everybody,
Mhm.
that's something I would say is it's just been coming up a lot lately.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Take it as more of as an observer. In fact, it reminds me, I had a guest several months ago, and we were talking about similar things about the way we beat ourselves up for, our emotions or our thoughts or getting stuck on something from the past. And she goes, if you, she goes, what next time you hear yourself saying those things, say them out loud as if you're saying them to someone else. And you'll
Right.
realize that you would never talk to anybody else the way you talk to yourself in your own head. And I
Yeah.
went, wow, you're right. I mean, we're so much more kind and caring towards others, you know, if somebody comes to you and says, I'm really, I suck at my business, everything's, it's just, I'm not doing anything right. It's good. You're not going to say you're right. You suck.
You're
You're going
absolutely
to go,
right.
come on,
Yeah.
look at what you are doing. We
Yeah.
boost each other up, but we tear ourselves down pretty
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah. And if someone did come to me and say that, I wouldn't jump into trying to change their mind right off the bat, because what they need is for someone to understand where they're at, right? They
Hmm.
need to feel acknowledged and heard, because if they're in that mindset, that's very real for them at that
Yeah.
time, right? And so if we could do the same things for ourselves, where it's like, hey, I see where you're at right now. I understand that's uncomfortable for you, but just know that it's okay that you're there. That's
Right.
like, it's that validation or that acknowledgement just gives us permission to be like, oh, okay, great. Like communication strategy for anyone listening, is just when someone comes to you with something, especially coaches, we tend to go right into this place of wanting to give advice. But what that person really needs first and foremost is just for someone to hear them, right? Because if someone says, hey, I'm dealing with this, I'm really struggling right now. And you go, oh, well, have you tried meditating or going for a walk or doing that? It's helpful, except that they just really need first and foremost to feel like they're not alone in it. Right. And I know what I'm often left with when someone tries to give me advice right away that I wasn't necessarily asking for, is that they didn't quite hear me. Right. Or I'm still left with it. So anyways, I find that when I let people know, hey, I know that must be really hard for you. I'm sorry that you're going through that. Then I can quickly, let them know what I might do in that situation. And they're open to it at that point.
Yeah, you can say like, I have some suggestions and strategies.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about those?
Exactly.
And they may say, yes, absolutely. Or they might say, no, I'm not ready for that. I've tried everything.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, let's just deal with where you are right now.
Exactly. And imagine we treated ourselves that way as well.
Exactly. And I think that's been the fun part of all my guests so far this month is really this sense of just giving ourselves a break, especially coming out of a pandemic, is to understand we are all going to have some long-term scars from this.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to watch for them because they're going to creep up in ways that I think we don't even recognize, because I think everybody thinks, well, once we're all vaccinated, we can all run around again, life will be great. Well, that's not necessarily going to be the case.
Yeah. I think there's still going to be a lot to unpack. And it is interesting because I've had lots of clients and even like my mom saying, I just don't know why I feel so anxious right now. My mom a few weeks ago was going, I'm retired now and I used to have such a high stress job and now I'm anxious. And I'm like, are you aware that there is a global pandemic going on and that it makes perfect sense that we would have anxiety at the current moment in time?
Yeah.
And it's like, we're just so quick to be like, oh, I feel this way and that's wrong. And I shouldn't be, right? I shouldn't be feeling this way because I'm retired, because I'm just sitting around at home. It's like, well, I know
would
for
make me anxious.
Yeah, I have more anxiety than I ever did before because I'm sitting around at home. There's not a lot of places to go. You can't go and connect with people, and so just having compassion for yourself, I really think is such a huge part of it.
I agree. And I think I can really see how in your work with other coaches as well, that, helping them to embrace this, not only kind of giving themselves a break, but also using some true practices towards manifestations that they can see. Well, it kind of trains the brain in a way of positive outlooks and positive outcomes that can come from that.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're going to have all your contact information on the show notes, but just in case somebody wants to look you up right now because they say, I want to know how to work with this incredible woman, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah. So I do a lot on Instagram. I'm at Lauren C. Saunders, and it's also my website, laurencsaunders.com. I have 2 podcasts, one that is for entrepreneurs. It's called the Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast. And then I have one that I co-host with a girlfriend of mine, and it's more mindset, self-development, manifestation, just in general. And it's called the Lo and Zo Show. So those are my main spaces online.
I love it. Well, before we go, do you have any last words of wisdom or pearls of advice for my listeners and viewers?
Pearls of advice: thoughts become things. So, allow yourself to spend some time each day, either through a scripting practice, a journaling practice, or I like to do visualizations, vision boards, where you're just allowing yourself to play around in the potential of things that you desire to create for yourself in your life. That's how it all started for me. I never thought I was going to have a business. I was just playing around in possibility and not taking life too seriously, allowing myself to explore. And, 5 years later, I have a very different reality as a result.
I love it. Lauren, thank you so much for being my guest today. I think you have some great insight, and I'm very glad that we've been able to share it with my audience.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael. And thank you to your audience for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Shock Your Potential podcast. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com, including details on Michael's 2 best-selling books. Tell me more, how to ask the right questions and get the most out of your employees, and sales mixology, why the most potent sales and customer experiences follow a recipe for success. And as always, Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and like us today.